Greetings, my name is Jackie Bach and I will be presenting on What's Math Got to Do with It by Joe Bowler.
In a recent international assessment of mathematics performance conducted in 64 countries across the world, the U.S. ranked 36th. It's time to change that. School math is widely hated among students and even adults, but the math of life, of work, of leisure is intriguing and interesting. For example, Sudokus and the show numbers encourage problem solving and logical thinking, which intrigues people and invites them in. Let's incorporate these principles into our classrooms. Like we discussed earlier, math is the study of patterns. It's not just a list of rules and procedures that need memorization. An example of a mathematical principle is the Fibonacci sequence. Now, this is the principle that any number can be found from the sum of the previous two numbers. For example, 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 1 is 3. So this type of pattern can not only be found in textbooks, but it can also be found in nature and in our environment. So if you look to the sunflower to the right of this principle, you will notice that there are seeds within the center of the flower. If you were to map the spirals of the seeds, you will see that close to the center there are 21 running counterclockwise. Just a little further out, there are 34 spirals running clockwise. These numbers appear next to each other in the Fibonacci sequence. Let's tell students about where you can find the Fibonacci sequence, not only in textbooks, but in the world. So that begs the question, do we continue to problem solve or drill and kill? So math should be exploratory and creative. It should not be repetitive and boring. And symbols, words, and pictures should be the key components to a successful math classroom and incorporated daily. The most important factor in school effectiveness, proved by study after study, is not the curriculum, but it's the teacher. The teacher has the opportunity to ask students hard questions that involve high-level thinking and problem-solving skills. The teacher can explain why the steps that they are doing works, why they what they're learning, and how it relates to everyday life. Teachers are the gateway to helping students love and adore math. And there is a big difference between hearing math being explained and then actually understanding it yourself and telling someone else what it is. It's very important that teachers then incorporate this principle into their mathematical teachings. Is learned by computing, by problem solving, and by conversing, more than by reading and listening. And then within that, reasoning and justifying are both critical acts. It's very difficult to engage in them without talking. So let's encourage our students to learn from one another and teach one another within the classroom. When I say math class, what do you think of? For me, I think of students raising their hands, of working independently on math problems, of being quiet. That's what I think of. That's the traditional approach to teaching mathematics. There are two other forms of math teaching that Joe Bowler presents. The first of which being the communicative approach. Communicative meaning communication. This is a form of teaching that allows students to work in groups and work with each other as they come across problems that they don't understand or they need help with. This especially helps students to appreciate the diversity of the class that they were in, especially if they were within a class with mixed ability groupings. Students also had to explain their thinking as they worked, especially with those that were seated around them, and there were also multiple forms of representation of the math that they were learning. The second approach is the project-based approach. Now, this is a very chaotic, less controlled approach than you and I might be used to, but students, instead of learning separate forms of math, such as algebra and geometry, students actually learned maths every year, the whole subject. Now, what maths is the study of how you use math in real life. It starts with different projects. Teachers will present an idea or a theme, and then students get to choose what project they would like to work on. And this is a very different form of teaching, but students seem to really enjoy it as Joe Bowler presented the information, and the students were able to learn new methods and learn new skills as across that work in their independent projects. In both the communicative approach and project-based approach had high success when it came to testing and students. As America is out of sync with the rest of the world when it comes to testing, there is a new form of testing that has been researched and studied by Joe Bowler. It's called assessment for learning. So it creates self-regulating learners who have the knowledge and power to monitor their own learning, focus on the skills students need in real life rather than the knowledge that can be tested, and it provides students free response questions instead of multiple choice answers. And then also within that, it's important to give students feedback. So students who were not given scores but instead given positive constructive feedback were more successful in their future work than those who received just grades. And that's true for the principle of assessment for learning and also within the classroom. And then peer feedback can be very helpful. Sometimes it's easier for students to learn from their peer instead of from their teacher. Studies have concluded that countries that leave grouping to the latest possible moment or that use the least amount of grouping by ability are those with the highest achievements. And it's achievement not just for those that would otherwise be placed into low tracks, but also for those that would be placed in high tracks too. Because those students that would be placed in high tracks can then help students that would be in the lower tracks understand the material better and more effectively. Research has shown that students' success is dependent on opportunity to learn. If students are not given opportunities to learn challenging and high-level work, then they do not achieve at high levels. When students are in lower group, they receive low-level work, and this is damaging. Others then will also perceive those students as low-level workers and low-level abilities, and that then affects students' chances to learn. So Donna Ford talked a lot about this. If we have the perception on students that they are in a certain category, then we're only going to teach that certain category. Let's rise above that as teachers. Also, when students are put into ability groups, they get hit with a damaging message that their ability is fixed. Now, Carol Dweck talks a lot about mindset. Either you have a fixed or you have a growth mindset. If you have a fixed, you feel like you cannot achieve, you cannot go above. Groups also then affect that mindset. There are two important factors of mixed ability grouping. Students must be given challenging work, and they must be able to work with one another.
Below, I have listed 12 tips that you can use in your classroom to help students understand math better. Thank you so much for your time.